Hey, friends. I can't believe it. I'm doing like 2 podcasts in a row today. And I am so excited to finish my Friday afternoon with, listen, I actually talk to this woman every day.
Mm.
But it's just fun that we're in like face to face ish. I guess it feels like face to face now. So that pandemic changed everything, didn't it?
Mm.
We talk every day with our friend Eden. We talk about voice teacher stuff. We talk about running our businesses. We talk about education, and jazz is a big part of our conversations. And Wendy will be presenting at the NATS conference in Knoxville, end of June, early July. And it is called Getting the Swing of It, a jazz primer. And that's going to be Sunday from 5 to 6 p.m. By the way, friends, I'll be putting links to everything in the show notes. And if you are attending the NATS conference, and hello, why wouldn't you? We'll be releasing the guidebook, and I'm going to actually also release a how to use it. And so you can add all the presentations and workshops and performances that you want to see. You'll be able to add them right in your app. So you just open that up. That's right. Do you remember it, Wendy? Have you used guidebook ever?
I have at the Jazz Educators Conference, and it's such a great way to keep track of what's coming up next and what you're wanting to see.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. So anyway, you've heard that beautiful voice. And by the way, gorgeous singer. I'm just going to say it. So, ladies and gentlemen, please meet Wendy.
Hey, y'all.
Wendy, tell us about yourself and what you're doing, because you have cool stuff going on, sister. Please tell us about yourself.
Oh, well, lots of cool things. I had been teaching a lot, and I took some time off during the pandemic, a lot of shifting there, and started to work for a doctor's office. I thought that might be nice because I really love teaching, but I don't enjoy running a business, if that makes sense. It's hard work, and I've learned a lot, and it's great, and I can do it, but it doesn't get me out of bed in the morning. But it turns out working at the doctor's office doesn't either. But I was working for an ENT, and every time someone came in and they had issues with speaking, taken back to how much I wanted to work as an SLP. Never really thought I could. I didn't think I was cut out to do the science or the math that was required. And I just couldn't say no to that anymore. So last summer, I started doing some prerequisites to see if I could indeed get into graduate school. And this is how much I wanted it. I took statistics and chemistry, and and was accepted to graduate school. So I am going to pursue the speech language pathology because I really want to work helping folks with voice disorders, not just singers and actors, but Parkinson's and strokes and gender affirming care. I'd like to be able to provide that as well. So I'm excited. I'm very nervous, I think appropriately so, because it's a rigorous path, but I'm looking forward to jumping in on it more.
It is. Like I said, friends, literally every day, Wendy and Eden and I are convos about various things. And sometimes when you share what you're working on, I literally feel like I've had to go and, could you hold for a minute while I go to the Googles and look up what you're talking about? Because it's really cool. And the thing is, I think the more SLPs out there that really understand the singer and also support the voice teacher, and dare I say, respect the voice teacher for what their knowledge is and what they bring to the table about the human voice. Obviously, I haven't studied medicine, and I did study some anatomy, of course, as a voice teacher. There's just a lot that we can bring to the table that could assist somebody who is an SLP, who I would consider, obviously, they're like next level. You will be next level with what you know about the vocal folds and all the inner workings of the body and things like that. So I think it's so great to have this kind of working knowledge for singers and for voice teachers. Do you think, so are you going to work in a doctor's office? What are you going to do?
Yeah, I work in voice care like that. No, that would be a wonderful thing. I'll just put it out there. No, I don't know yet. Just getting through the course the program, I have discovered that there's a lot about it that I didn't know. I think I first started thinking, oh, well, speech language pathologists work with people who have had nodes or surgery or polyps or stuttering. And there's so much more to it, obviously. And, literacy and oh gosh, it's deep. And I've only skimmed the surface. I know that I don't know anything, but I think a lot of voice teachers would be surprised. I took acoustics of speech this spring, and it was a lot of work, but most of it, not all of it, most of it I already knew from being a voice teacher. And I think that I felt a lot of my classmates, they were younger. This is my second time through school. They were struggling some, especially when it came to formants and harmonics. And I thought, boy, I'm finally getting those. And it just took me 25 years, and they only have a week. So advantage for sure.
Sure. And I mean, let's face it, Wendy, right? I was just saying this to Eden this morning. I feel like I sing better now than I did in my 20s because I have so much more knowledge, literal, physical, brain knowledge. It's amazing how much we've learned about the human voice. And now, of course, with social media and YouTube and being in groups like NATS and SECO and having those kinds of really knowledgeable people like you and so many of the people in our groups around to learn what we've come to find out about the human voice in, I would say, recent times, let's say the last 20 years. It's groundbreaking and incredible, don't you think?
Oh, for sure. I sing differently. There's not only the physical component of it, of understanding the science, and that what we were told years ago, that if it's not based in classical technique, it's not going to work and you're going to hurt yourself, which is quite the opposite, because I know I did the legwork on that up close and personal, which is how I came to know Duke Voice Care. But now there's not only the science that backs it up, but also the just understanding who I am and understanding what my voice is capable of, and understanding that I can never and will never, could never sound like Jesse Norman, and just to kind of accept what it is that I do well, and just try to, I still work on that daily. It's a constant struggle not to sound bigger or more powerful or something, and just accept the voice and sing, healthfully and honestly,
I love that so much. I feel like sometimes I'm talking about that with my own students. Let's embrace the sound you have and then enhance that, because no one else has that. I always talk about my analogy of the voice being like a fingerprint, right? You're the only one who has those sound waves. And when we enhance that, instead of I wish I could sound like her or him, whatever, then that's when artistry happens. Sounds a little woo-woo, but that's really what I think.
Well, that's what I think too. And I've had that conversation a lot with my students, because when we're learning jazz, we are trying to emulate, because you can't talk about this. You can't sing what you can't hear. So you have to listen. And yes, you're going to pick up licks and stylisms from great artists. But when you try to, sound like an artist and do everything exactly like them, I would tell my students, because I've had to tell myself, I don't want to hear the second-rate Ella. I want to hear the first-rate you. So you can incorporate some of this. But we've already got an Ella. We've already got a Sarah Vaughan. How do you do it? Using them as influences, of course. They're like, how do you do it? Because that's your interpretation is just as valid and just as exciting and just as worthwhile, So.
Oh my gosh, Wendy, that is so great. I don't want to hear a second-rate Ella. I want to hear a first-rate you. That makes me watery. That is so perfectly said. And this is such a great segue to talk about because I really want to get into the heart of your presentation, is that, the greatest thing that I think instrumentalists do that no one ever talked to me about doing it as a singer. And now I've come to embrace it and then teach it. I listen to the licks, or I listen to the modalities that a singer is using, and I try to emulate it so that I could figure out, now, how could I do something like that? Or how can that influence my own singing? And instrumentalists are so good at let's transcribe whoever's horn lick, or somebody, Thelonious Monk's piano riff or whatever, transcribe that and then learn from it, and then figure out how to incorporate it into our own creativity, right?
Right. Exactly. So it's an important part of learning. And I think I used to because my background was classical, I used to start with the music. And part of the reason I'm
Mm.
doing this session is
Mhm.
I made a lot of mistakes along the way, or maybe not mistakes. Kids learned and people learned, but it felt like sometimes we were stalling out. And I had to go, you know what? Don't approach this the way you would teach a classical lesson. Try something different. And since jazz is so much an oral technique, a tradition, I said, let's learn this by ear first.
Mm.
And let's learn this by ear first, especially after hearing some of the things at the Jazz Educators Conference and Victor Wooten, and he
Right.
talked about this being a language. And then with my speech pathologist studies, we were talking about, we hear the language and then we emulate and we
Yes.
learn to make the sounds. Then we make sentences, and then we can create our own sentences, not just repeat what we've heard. And then when we have the facility of language, we're able to create our own sentences, but we have to go through that process. And so, and that's a little bit more with regards to improvisation, but it still applies. So I started with listening, and I would have my students, we pick out a tune, and I would say, bring me 3 vocal recordings and 2 instrumental recordings of this that you
Mm.
like. And so they had sometimes dig. They couldn't just listen to 5 versions. Of course, if
Right.
they couldn't find that many, it would be okay. But I wanted them to go looking and listening, because
Sure.
that's what's going to inform. Just like opera, if you never listen to Rossini, like, how are you going to know how to do that?
Right. Sometimes it's putting you in the situation, which
Mhm.
is why we should all go out and listen to whatever
Mhm.
genre we're working on, right? Jazz, musical theater, opera, classical, whatever it is. Go put
Exactly.
yourself in that situation and listen to the people who are doing it and doing it well.
Right.
That can sometimes be a challenge, but
Mhm.
like I love Aubrey Logan. Do you know who she is?
Yes, I do.
I seriously love her. And
Thank you for reminding me about that. I'm writing it down.
I love her, and I love how I often use that. She has a great riff, and God rest you, merry gentlemen. If you've never heard that recording, it's
Mhm.
so good. And I teach that to my kids. And the fun thing is that often what'll happen is they realize, oh, it's almost just the scale going down. This is the reason why we want to understand even the basics of music theory, because that's where all your riffs are actually coming from, friend. They're coming from the chord structure or
Mhm.
riff that just happened a few bars before in a different instrument or in a different
Mhm.
octave, and then you can repeat it and it doesn't sound the same because you're a voice, and all,
Yes. Yes.
right, all the cool things. So I'm so excited. So tell me, what can we expect from your presentation? I know you've told us a little, but I'm so excited for this, and I want everyone to feel as excited as I do.
Yeah, I'm excited about it too. Again, people can learn from my stumblings, but I've just experienced different situations where folks wanted to audition for a jazz program, or they wanted to show up and go to a jazz jam, but they really didn't know kind of the basics. And I wanted to give the teacher who wanted to expand and teach that genre just the
Mm-hmm.
very basics of how they might go about it and make sure that their students sound authentic, from choosing keys and repertoire to kind of identifying some of the stylistic characteristics of jazz versus other things. And I'm in the process of making a video. It's called "Is It Jazz or Is It Not?" Or is it jazz or jazzy? I'm not sure yet, but I got the videos. I just have to make one big video so we
I
can
love
actually
it.
hear it. And then I'm working on some vocal exercises and warm-ups that will help train the ear. And then I got a tune that we're going to work on. So hopefully, rather than I'll talk a little bit, have some slides, but I hope to get people involved more, because I do feel like you have to feel it. It has to, you got to,
Yes.
I can't just talk at you. We got to do it, so it should be fun. Everybody can sing together. Nobody's going to be put on the spot, but we're going to sing a tune as it's written on the page. And then I've written it out with some suggestions of how you could do it as a changing the rhythms and the melody and stuff. Suggestions. Obviously, there are plenty of different ways you could approach it, but this is one way to get people jump started.
Oh, I just love that so much because, and it's funny, Wendy. I mean, I know you are so gracious to share your truly vast knowledge. And by the way, friends, if you don't know, Wendy was a regular sub for New York Voices,
Well, I
right?
wasn't a regular sub. That was just like a little one-time
You
thing, but yes.
did it.
Yes.
You did it. And I'm sure that's not a gig that was subbed out. Let's put it that way. Those people do not sub out their kids.
Right. That's true. And I did record with Darman too. So that was something I got to do on his CD that came out last May. So yeah.
So they're so amazing. And just,
Oh,
my gosh,
yes.
they're like my literal faves. Well, Manhattan Transfer too, right? They're the OGs of that. I mean, that's when I first was excited when I heard Operator, and I was like, wait, like look at my eyes. I'm like, such a dork, but I could cry thinking about when it's that thing where I heard somebody sing like that, and I'm all, oh, I kind of make some of those sounds, so it's okay. Because, of course, as usual, we're all conditioned to think that classical and legit is the only way. And I'm not. It's a beautiful way. And there's many times I wish that I had that aplomb. Although funny, I can do it as a tenor, but not as not in the alto or mezzo soprano register. But yeah, listening to those sounds that they were making and the harmonies. And then it's almost like when those voices are singing together, when they have those harmony structures, it's a whole new sound, a whole nother level of sound that just it evokes so much feelings and joy and their storytelling through harmonics. Oh my God,
I'm so excited to hear you get that excited, because my first, I mean, I had heard Manhattan Transfer, but I had never had any experience with vocal jazz ensemble until 12 years ago when I went to University of North Texas for their educator summer thing. And what was funny is I've sung a lot of choirs and a lot of operas, and I went down there and I thought, this is not hard. And I got down there, my butt was kicked. I learned my music before I got there, but singing those kinds of harmonies, going, here's the dominant 7, now you're going to sing the sharp 11, and you're going to, and this half step or whole step apart, and singing straight tone and locking in. I am convinced that the secret to the world, if we all sing the right chord perfectly in tune, the world, the secrets of the universe will open. That's what it feels like. Like you're about ready to discover something big when you're singing those harmonies and they're locked in. It's really exciting. Yeah.
It is. And you know what? I love hearing you say that, friend. Because, for example, Jacob Collier talks about that. Right? I mean, yes. And he talks about, that's why have you seen him do those like choir audience things?
He's crazy good.
I've watched him now, whatever that first one, the Flintstones and all of those, and also so techie that I actually found him because of video editing, not because of his. And then I took him to my teacher and I was like, wait, what is happening right now? How is he speaking semitones? And then to himself. And he could, oh my gosh, right? So but what he talks about is when people are singing together, it's his opinion. I'm not saying it perfectly, so go look it up. But he talks about when people are singing together, it changes the feelings in the room. It changes as we know, right? When we sing, when people say, oh, that moved me, it's because it's real. It's moving the hair. Our breath is a physical thing, moving the air physically, actually, not metaphorically. And then the hair on our arms and our skin is being touched and moved. And then it evokes feelings in our body, right? Like it's whoa. But the funny thing is it's so deeply rooted in science and physicality that that's why when I always tell them, hey, you may not enjoy opera or country or whatever it is that you don't enjoy, but when you hear a good singer singing in tune with an instrumentalist, you can't help but think, oh, I don't really like that song, but dang, oh God. No, something special is going on.
Yes, you can feel it. It's indescribable. We try to describe it, but there really aren't words. And I think when there's an ensemble of singers singing together, like New York Voices, like the Real Group, like Manhattan Transfer, there's something that is just feels like we're about to crack the secrets of the universe.
It's so great. I love this. And now, okay, one of the things that I really like about your presentation is that you're really hopeful and encouraged that those people who have been teaching classically predominantly, or other musical theater maybe as well, that you want those kinds of teachers to come to this so that not only will that give them more students, but so that they know Okay, I'm going to say what I think, and then you help me fix this. So they
Okay.
know that all of their amazing knowledge is not for naught. It's actually fabulous. This is like another piece of the puzzle, right? Is that how you would say it? Am I saying it?
Yes, it's absolutely right. I mean, if somebody already knows jazz, they can come if they want, but this is not going to be anything new to them. But it's for ideally so no one has to kind of struggle as I did when I started trying to find the repertoire, trying to have them do exercises that were pertinent to what they were going to be singing major scales and in head voice up an octave and a third or whatnot. That's not unhelpful. I mean, certainly strengthen and develop function throughout the voice is great, but most tunes are going to have an octave range and you're going to sing in a speak like, in dealing with rhythm and dealing with harmony and just some of the basic things to do to get started and kind of differentiating between jazz versus jazzy or musical theater, because there's nothing wrong with either one. Let's face it, you're probably going to make more money singing that musical theatery kind of jazzy stuff like I did on cruise ships and things like that. But one of the things I say in the presentation is just singing Summertime down an octave does not make it jazz. And I did that. And I was some of my shtick on the cruise ship. I'm going to sing it up an octave and then I'm going to drop it down like it's jazz. That's not jazz. It's fun shtick and the audiences love it. So that's fine. But, just know what things are. And I'm not trying to gatekeep with in terms of jazz or anything like that. It's a music that I will admit to getting involved with because I liked how kind of I had this, I will admit, this kind of romantic kind of fantasy about jazz. It's a club and you're up there and the flowers in your hair and the lights are on you and you're singing and that's fabulous. Right. Yes. And then the very first workshop I ever did was Jamie Aebersold's workshop, and it's mostly for instrumentalists, which was another good thing. But to understand that there was a rich history and culture and background to that music, I learned in the first 15 minutes of his first lecture, this is so much more. And then that's when I really got hooked. It wasn't just this romanticized version of a musical style. It was the culture and the history and understanding the African roots and understanding that music better and the culture better and how it was born here in America and it's all over the world now, but it was born in America, and that gives me chills. And it's a music of freedom. It's expression, and everybody gets to take turns and you respond and interact in real time. There's just so many things to go on. And I will not be giving a jazz history lesson because it's beyond the scope of that to have the jazz history. There are wonderful places where you can get that, but it's just, that's what intrigued me. And I'm so glad that I started to understand as I look at a picture of John Coltrane on my wall and Horace Silver on my wall right now. I'm thinking it's just, we're so lucky to be able to have this and to understand it and study it. And I just want other people to feel comfortable dipping their toe in it and maybe experiencing that joy that comes and the challenge, because I will add, I've sung a lot of different music, improvisation and making things up and expressing yourself off of the page was not anything that was cultivated in me young. And this is why I think it's important for classical singers, because if you never decide to take the stage and sing a jazz piece, that's fine. But if your teacher says, come on in, let's improvise, no right or wrong, but let's improvise for the first 5 minutes, or Bobby McFerrin does, free improvise for 5 minutes, making up a tune, let it go wherever it goes, 5 minutes straight. Try that every single day. Every singer should try that. It feels, you're scared at first. Well, maybe you won't be. I am. I feel inhibited and what's right, what's wrong, and I don't want to do this. And when I asked my students to do it, they were like, no, I don't know about that. But then they got used to it. I just want you to love your voice and what you bring to it. You never have to do this in public. You never ever have to compose. You never have to write a song, but you need to feel comfortable enough in your musicianship that you can express and let it all hang out. And that's why I think it's so valuable. Jazz has taught me things that I never knew I needed to know.
Oh, Wendy, that's I just love that. It's beautifully said. And I should not say we have not all, but for
Right.
myself, I defined jazz incorrectly and maybe just on the surface. So instead of saying that I was wrong, I will just say that I had a working surface knowledge. But
Mhm.
further you go into things, like you said, the way that we can express ourselves when we don't have constraints is
Mhm.
really, or just the constraints of the maybe the trio or the guitarist or pianist that you're playing with, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then allow them to have the constraints and then you can play, or vice versa. You sit down as something solid and then they play around you. I mean, there's so many possibilities to the performance of jazz. And I think the more we talk about this, because let's face it, we all know that jazz, a lot of times jazz clubs, it's not jazz. And
Oh,
that's okay.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
okay.
A lot of the jazz festivals, sometimes some
Yeah.
would. It got me really thinking this week because I've been doing a lot of listening, trying to decide what I wanted to put into the,
Mm,
is it jazz or jazzy? And
mhm.
ultimately, I'm going to put things in that when I have judged commercial nats or whatnot, folks have
Yes.
said this is jazz, and I thought it's jazzy, and there's nothing wrong with that. But let's talk about what makes it different. Then you know what you're doing, and you say whatever it is you're doing. But in many respects, just singing the Great American Songbook doesn't make it jazz. And
Exactly.
as I listened to, what makes it jazz, inflection of the blues and the slides and guides and gritty textures or breathy textures and sudden changes of dynamics and really in the groove, singing in the groove and using the consonants to reinforce the feel of the music and
Mhm.
that sense of improvisation and what's coming next. And it's a little bit different each time. As I listened to, who was I listening to? Why can't I
Yeah.
think? Me and Bobby McGee, Janis Joplin sing Summertime. I thought this is closer to jazz in a way than some of the other things. And then I was listening to some hip hop stuff and I thought, this is really, there's horns, there's improvisation, there's the rhythm, I thought this is closer to jazz than some of the things that I used to do that I thought was jazz, simply just
Mm.
singing with a trio on a cruise ship just because it was a Gershwin didn't make it jazz, you know?
Right. Right. I
So,
love hearing that. It's so fun to find that because if somebody was singing, I'm a classical singer, but all they really did was breathe very structurally and have a lot of vibrato, for example,
mhm,
two obvious attributes of a classical singer. There's
mhm,
obviously more attributes, but if
right.
you use those two things, does that
Mhm.
make you a classical singer? You know,
Right.
I
So I
mean,
think
but are you a classical singer? That right?
exactly. So
Mm,
it's anything else. There are practices and performance practices and
mm,
expectations with any genre.
right.
And let me tell you, if I could make a living singing French art song, I'd be doing it too because I love it, right? But that's not my voice. And I actually thought when I got my master's degree in voice, I'm going to sing French art song in people's parlors. What fantasy? Music was a fantasy for me for eons, I think. So uh, I'm going to sing in people's parlors. I was living in Amadeus or something like that in the film. But in any case, well, that's a little pre-dating the music that I speak of. But in any case, I think the point is made.
No,
Back
I
when
just
there were parlors and people had music
yes,
in their houses and for
yes.
royalty,
Well, I think that's the resurgence of the living room concerts.
Mm,
Honestly, I think we all, and that's the best part of this to sort of wrap up this conversation, which is we're all going back to this roots thing as the listeners and as performers, because I think sometimes it's funny. I've had friends just say, will you just sing, whatever it was. Someone just asked me to sing Imagine. They were like, I just love the way you do that. And I'm like, the Beatles Imagine. Oh, okay. They were like, I just want to hear you sing that. And I realized it was the intimacy of just me on the piano and then just them listening, which is really how it was back then, right? It would be just this
mhm.
family, the singer, the instrumentalist, whatever it was. And people would go from home to home. And it was this much more intimate, beautiful conversation. Not that the big arenas and stuff aren't fun and thrilling, but it's a different game, that level of intimacy, I think.
No, I agree. I think that not everyone can control their online experience in terms of how much screen time they're involved with. And I'm working on that too. I think it can be very valuable, and
Mhm.
I'm very thankful for it, but it can become very addictive. And then everything is consumed in speed mode, and it feels like distant. And I've just noticed, ever since things opened up after the pandemic, and it's still going on, more and more people coming to our live concerts. The big band concerts, I sing with a couple of different big bands, and there's more people there and more people listening,
Yeah.
and not very many people holding up their video cameras,
Right.
videoing and taking it in. And I
Mm.
find myself not, except because I'm the social media person, I have to get some, but
Yeah.
I find myself doing less of it too. I'm just doing what's required because I am taking it in. It feels like something fresh and new. And it is exciting to be in those intimate live performances where you can really just take it in and be fully present for the artistry that is present on the stage.
I love that. And as you know, I love social media, and I love when people
Mm,
share a moment, and that's always my recommendation. Take a moment, take your selfie. If there's
hmm
a you love, film her or him, or doing a moment, and then put it down
hmm
and be with them. Because
Yes.
to me, that what'll happen is you'll look at that video, hopefully short, right? Short video or image, picture, and then it will make you think about, all those wonderful feelings and emotions. And what I think that does when it's not too long, it makes you want to go back. You know what? I need to go hear Wendy again. Babe, when are we going to hear that girl sing her again? I gotta go. Then you're looking to get back out and hear
hmm
them again because
hmm
you lived in that moment. And I know some people have been like, wow, you don't think we should be all camera all the time? And I'm like, no, I think I love both of those things, both and right. Get a picture, get your video moment, and then be.
Exactly. It's so funny because I was at a New York Voices concert in South Carolina last month, and I took a lot of video. I've heard them many times, but I wasn't trying to get great video. I knew they were going to retire. So I felt this, and I had my camera held up like right by my chest so nobody could see it. I wasn't worried about framing, and I just kept getting it. And I've listened to the clips again and again, but no matter what kind of instrument you have, it never captures it as well as the live experience. I mean, your ears, the phone is just not maximized for that sound of the big band and the quartet or the rock band or whatnot. I don't care how good of a phone you have. It's still not maximized for that. And so, yes, to get your snippet, get your memory, but I always feel disappointed if I post something online because I was like, well, they sounded a whole lot better than that because I recorded it on an iPhone, and I love my iPhone. I love my iPhone.
Mhm.
Uh, it's not meant for that kind of recording. Yeah.
Well, and it's the kind of thing where there's so much more, right? If you're outside, I know we've been to the, Griffiths in California and the Hollywood Bowl, and when the birds are chirping and the sun's going down, you might hear cars driving by. All of that, I love all of that. It lends to the beauty. Or
Mhm.
we have jazz in the park in our neighborhood every so often, and it's funny. The kids are running around playing, and birds are chirping, and a dog's barking, and a band is playing, or I get to sit in with them, or whatever it is. And I love that so much because it's life. Oh, that's
It's the
awesome.
sounds. It's the sound of life, and
Mhm.
it's so wonderful when when you stop to take it in. And I think that, I don't know, when I get online and I look at a lot of stuff, I said, it's everybody wants to be one of the things. They want to be a reviewer or a photographer or a
Mhm.
videographer or a model or something. And those kinds of things, not everyone, but plenty of people do fancy themselves amateur,
Yeah.
this, that, and the other. And I like to see things from people's lives. Like, I want to see your picture or your little video from your experience and, oh my gosh, they're having such a good time. I'm into that and things like that. But like you said, it's a moment, capture it for whatever, but don't forget to live it, you
Yes.
know?
Nothing is better than jazz to express that. I mean, to me, it's such a the beauty of jazz, for my opinion, and I would love to hear yours, is that it's not only like bass and raw, but it's also refined. Somehow both of those things exist
Mhm.
in medium that it is. When I listen to these people and I'm like, the amount of talent that I'm listening to right now is mind-boggling, but there's no constraints going on. How do I do that?
Yes. Yes. I mean, there's so many things to love about jazz. But I love that it's something for everyone. Everyone can participate. It's, equal opportunity music. There's freedom in it. It is a music of freedom, and it is express everyone's. In fact, I think that Herbie Hancock says that. He says, and I was just looking up the quote, jazz is really about the human experience. It's about the ability of human beings to take the worst of circumstances and struggles and turn it into something creative and constructive. That's something that's built into the fiber of every human being. And I think that's why people can respond to it. They feel freedom in it. And the attributes of jazz are so admirable. It's about dialogue. It's about sharing and teamwork. It's in the moment, and it's non-judgmental. And that's what I like about jazz. And that's why I think it's so important for us to understand the music, even if we're not going to perform it. But heck, give it a while. You might have some fun performing it.
Oh my gosh, I love this so much, Wendy. So friends, I will be putting all of the information about Wendy's presentation, when it is at the conference. And I know you're not teaching as much, but if people want to reach out to you and talk to you about it, could they book a session with you or something?
Oh, of course. I'm still doing some lessons, and I have through my website. Primarily, I'm working with folks that really are jazz specific. A lot of them are coming from, I was told I couldn't sing that, or I was only allowed to sing Mozart. And so I love me some Mozart, but we can do Mozart and Monk. It's those people. I'm not really doing beginners and music theater so much anymore. And also folks that are, and this translates well into SLP stuff, but those people that have been teaching, a lot of public school teachers, and they've sacrificed their voice for their teaching, and to help them get back on track until I'm licensed to do rehabilitation. Then I'm working on that too.
Well, oh my gosh, how lucky we have you, girl. And so lucky to call you friend. I adore you and love you, and
ditto.
Love all the things you're doing. And so, be sure, friends, to look for us at the conference. I am ready to hug every person.
Yes. Go Nats. Woohoo.
And we'll be and we're going to be sitting together watching Eden on opening night, which is Friday night, doing her show. So come find me and Wendy, because we'll be there screeching and having fun. And then maybe we'll all be having a glass of wine afterward. Thanks for joining us today. You'll find all the information in my show notes. And Wendy, thank you for chitty-chatting with me about jazz this afternoon. I could talk all day about it, but we'll behave and not do that.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me, Karen.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.